Hi, this is Steve at the Listening Post. I recently spoke about Gene Clark, who helped to found the Byrds, and spoke about how he had trouble jump-starting his solo career after leaving the Byrds, in large part due to the incompetence and neglect on the part of his record company. Today I'm going to talk about John Sebastian, who helped found the Lovin Spoonful, and he's got a very similar story to Gene Clark's. He was wildly successful with the Lovin Spoonful. Their first 7 singles reached the top 10, but when he left to start on a solo career, 2 different record companies fought over who had the rights to release his first album, and it prevented him from getting out of the starting blocks as quickly as he might have, and probably hurt him over the long haul. There's a certain romantic idealism associated with the music industry that is quite often out of touch with the hard, cold business side of it. Not every musician is going to grow up to be the next Eric Clapton, just like every little leaguer is not going to grow up to be the next Willie Mays. And being a musician is a much tougher gig than you would think by watching the people who are successful. And in the case of Gene Clark and John Sebastian, you can have the talent and you can put out the great albums and still not be successful. So it really is an achievement for the people that are able to get over the top, after all the hurdles they have to jump through to do it. John Sebastian was born in 1944 in New York City. He grew up in Greenwich Village. His father was a classical harmonica player, and his mother wrote stories for radio programs. So he came from a very creative family and learned harmonica from his father. By the time he was 16 years old, he was already playing in the coffee houses and the folk clubs in Greenwich Village. When he was 18, he started working in a group called the Even Dozen Jug Band, which had David Grisman, a mandolin player, and a woman named Maria D'Amato, who would later join Jim Kweskin's group and marry the lead singer Jeff Moldar, and her name would become Maria Moldar. John Sebastian also worked as a sideman during this period on several recordings with Tom Rush, Fred Neil, and Tim Hardin. And he played bass on Bob Dylan's first electric album, Bringing It All Back Home. In early 1965, while the Beatles and the British Invasion were all the rage on radio, John Sebastian got together with Zal Yanofsky, another folk artist performing in Greenwich Village, and they teamed up with 2 rock musicians from Long Beach, Steve Boone on bass and Joe Butler on drums, to form the Lovin Spoonful. Zal Yanofsky had been in a group called the Mugwumps that also had Cass Elliot and Denny Doherty in it. And they went on to form the Mamas and the Papas. The Lovin Spoonful recorded a couple of demos for Elektra Records in 1965. They came out on an album called What's Shaking that was pretty cool. It's got, in addition to the Lovin Spoonful, it's got Al Kooper, Tom Rush. It's got the Paul Butterfield Blues Band featuring Mike Bloomfield on guitar. And it's got a couple of tracks by Eric Clapton, post-Yardbirds, pre-Cream, including an early version of Crossroads, which he would have a pretty big hit with when he joined Cream. The Lovin Spoonful were performing at the Night Owl Cafe in Greenwich Village, and they recorded the song Do You Believe in Magic in 1965, produced by Eric Jacobson, and then started shopping it around. They finally signed a contract with MGM Records and released the song on the Kama Sutra label, and it became a number 9 hit on the Billboard Top 100. It came out in August 1965, just a few months after the Byrds released Mr. Tambourine Man, and those 2 songs were kind of a 1-2 punch in response to the British invasion. The Lovin Spoonful, first 7 songs reached the top 10, including Summer in the City, which became a number 1 hit in August 1966. In 1967, Zal Yanofsky and Steve Boone were arrested in San Francisco for marijuana possession, and in order to avoid deportation back to Canada, Zal Yanofsky named the person who had provided him with the drugs. This got him off the hook with the police, but gave the band a black eye in the hip community and led to the loss of some of their popularity. I also recall that the band was blacklisted in a lot of cities because of their name, the Lovin Spoonful. Some people thought that it was a reference to heroin use. Actually, the name came from a song by Mississippi John Hurt called Coffee Blues, and in the chorus he talks about just got to have my lovin' spoonful, a spoonful of Folgers coffee, I believe is what the song's about. But the band started to become less popular. They did do the soundtrack to the Woody Allen film What's Up Tiger Lily. They had a hit single off that called Pal. And they also composed the music for Francis Ford Coppola's second film, You're a Big Boy Now. And that song was a popular hit. One of my favorite songs by the Lovin Spoonful was on that soundtrack, Darling Be Home Soon, which reached number 15 on the charts. In 1966, two Los Angeles television producers, Bob Rafelson and Bert Schneider, wanted to make a TV program that would basically mimic the two Beatles movies, Hard Day's Night and Help. The program would go on to become the Monkees, but their initial thought was to use a real band for that program, and they approached the Lovin Spoonful to see if they'd be interested, but the two sides couldn't come to an agreement on the publishing rights, which would be, a very lucrative cash stream. So the producers ended up holding an audition and got actors and other musicians to play the parts of this fictional band, which would go on to become very successful. And the Monkees put out some great albums. They had the best songwriters and the best musicians in LA performing on their albums, so they were going to put out some good music.